Welcome to Break On Through, the podcast where we talk to up-and-coming musicians about their journey to the top, from where they started and where they're going. And I have a special guest on today because you're also a podcaster. This is Chewey from Exploring the Myths Behind Legends. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I listened to your show for the first time today, and I must say I enjoy it. Anybody who loves horror movies and stuff like that, it's definitely worth checking out. Very well put together, and you seem to know a lot of the science behind the psychology. Did you have any schooling for any of that?
I did actually. I was a psych major in college a long time ago, it seems. But yeah, I actually have a bachelor's of psychology.
Nice. Where did you go to? Because I listen now on the podcast. I know you're not originally from America. You're from Mexico, correct?
Yeah.
So did you go to, like, did you do that here? Did you go to school here?
Yeah, I've been here since '95, give or take. So it's been a while.
Wow. Yeah, you have
But
been here for a while.
I was about 10 when I moved over here. So I was like in the middle of fifth grade, I believe. And it was a big change, of course. But I mean, it took me about a year or two to properly learn the language. And then after that, I've been here ever since. I actually went to a school for high school that's not like a regular high school. It was called a magnet school. So it was kind of not necessarily for smarter kids, but for kids that wanted something a little bit differently. So that school was kind of like going to a community college, kind of, because I had to drive or the bus picked me up, and it was like a 45-minute drive, and then the library's in a different building. It's kind of like a little college, right? So that was my high school experience, and then that's where I found out that I wanted to major in psychology. So that's what I did in college.
That's awesome. I've always been kind of interested in psychology. I'm not very good at it. Tried to take a course in high school. I wasn't very good at it. But the reason I asked you, if you wanted to come on here, was because I also found out that you were also a musician. You play guitar, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So let's start from the beginning. Usually the way I do this is I like to ask you, what was it that started your love of music growing up?
It's kind of funny because it's not that I didn't like music, but I didn't appreciate it when I was a kid too much. I would listen to like in the radio and stuff like that, but of course my parents played their music, and I wasn't really too much of a big fan of that growing up. I mean, you know how it is.
Right.
Not that I was a rebel or anything, but growing up in Mexico, of course, it's all the Mexican music, and now I listen to it and I like it. I appreciate it for what it is. It's enjoyable. But back then I was a kid, and I was like, I don't like my dad's music. It's boring. It's you know how it is. So
Oh yeah.
it wasn't until my brothers are quite older than me, by the way. So they were in high school when I was like in elementary. So they would listen to music that I thought was different and that was cool in a way, because it was a whole bunch of rock and metal. This is back in the early '90s.
All right.
So a whole bunch of Guns N' Roses. I was, and I'll go into that in a minute. But it was Guns N' Roses, Metallica, a whole bunch of stuff like that. Bon Jovi, all the '80s bigger bands, stuff like that. So that was when I was a little kid, and it wasn't until I was in high school. I was maybe like 14, 15 years old in high school when I started listening to more music, more like actually getting into it. I was like, hey, that's a cool song. I like that song. What is that? And I would look up the band, whatever, and buy the CD or something. Because back then it was CDs, it wasn't Napster yet. I don't think it was available yet. Maybe like a year or two off.
Oh, you're going way back. Yeah, you're going back before the days of streaming and stuff.
Yeah, no, this is back like 20 years ago, man. So
Nice.
I didn't get my first guitar until I was about 15, so about a year after I started kind of getting into music. It was Christmas of '99, actually. So, but what got me to that point, going back a little bit, was that one time it was the most random thing, man. We were cleaning the house, and I found some tapes that would belong to my older brother. And it was all the '80s stuff that I would listen to with them when I was a kid, right? So I was like, hey, I kind of remember this. Let's see what this is about, and kind of started going back down memory lane. And I liked it when I was, 10 years after the fact. I was like, wow, this is really good music. So the one that caught me like the most off guard, I guess, is the first Guns N' Roses album, The Appetite for Destruction. And I was like, what
Great
is this?
album. That's a great album.
Dude, yeah, I was like, what is this? Like the screaming of Axl, and then all the guitars are going all, because you got to remember back then, 2000, the biggest band in the world was probably Creed, or if not Creed, what was it?
In
One of those.
2000? Probably
Yeah.
like Stained or Creed or something like that.
Yeah, one of those
you're right.
bands.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
and see, and now I listen to that music and I think it's okay. I mean, I don't like it still too much. I mean, but back then I was like, oh man, this stuff is horrible. I could not relate to any of that music that was going on back then in my generation. So finding those tapes is pure serendipity. It just happened at the right time for me, I guess. And I got really into music to the point that my schoolwork started to falter a little bit. I was kind of like an okay student, mostly B's, some A's here and there. And then when I got into guitar playing, I started getting mostly B's and a little bit of C's. But you know how it is, man. So after that, dude, it was just, guitar. And then, of course, in college, I got more into it because you meet people from all over the region, whatever, or even from out of state. And that was what pushed me to, because when I was playing for myself, I mean, as far as when I was still kind of barely getting into it, it was, again, for myself for the most part. I would just, I like this song, so I'll learn it and just play it like that. But then I met people in college, hey, you play guitar, right? Yeah. You want to jam with us? Sure. So I would show up and I would have no idea what to do. Because it'd be, we're playing this song, it's an E. And I was like, well, what's E? I had no idea what any of that stuff was, but I would just learn the songs, like, not by ear, but I mean, I would have magazines or whatever. Back then, magazines would print the chord sheets or the tabs, whatever. So that's how I would learn songs, but I would never pay any attention to the technical aspects as far as the theory or anything like that. So I was like, whatever, I'll just learn this. And in college, that's when I was like, you know what? If I'm gonna be doing this, I need to know what the hell I'm doing. I need to actually
learn it.
What is E? So long story short, I mean, just to wrap it up here real quick. So that was in college. That's when I was like the big moment for me as far as I need to figure this out, and I haven't figured it out yet, but it's a journey, man. It's really exciting.
That's also because I have a kind of a similar thing. Like I have an older sister though, not an older brother. And growing up, had it not been for her, I don't know what I'd be listening to because I might be a few years older than you, not much. We're right around the same age range, but the first album I ever found was Metallica and Justice for All. Now I grew up. I actually really liked my dad's music. The reason I started this podcast was because of my father. He's a musician. And I just before this dropped, I had a 3-part series with him I wrapped up. But his music, was like Hendrix and stuff like that. But it was always like my dad. It was my dad's music. Like you said, like I liked it. I didn't appreciate it until I had like my older sibling, show me what basically would wrap up, my musical taste. To this day, I still listen to the stuff today. So you kind of like, did you just learn from like magazines and stuff like that? You never took any kind of lessons or anything?
No, actually, I never went to schools. I have a cousin that's a music teacher, and he tried teaching me back in the day, but I was like, I don't understand what you're telling me, dude. Like, I want to rock. I want to play, power chords and whatever. And that's unfortunate. I think looking back now, I think I would have liked to ask him more for guidance as to, hey, man, how do you do this? What is that? Because I feel that would have made me jump in my musical knowledge like 5 years at least. Like I said, it wasn't until I was in college that I was like, okay, what am I doing here? So, and even then, I just learned on my own. I would kind of, like you said, pick up a tab from a magazine or something, or back then the internet was already kind of getting big. So people would post tabs on the internet, and a lot, they're all wrong for the most part. So half the fun was, okay, I guess this is kind of in the neighborhood, but that note is wrong. So half the fun was, okay, what is that? But then I got to figure the right notes myself because that's close enough, but not quite the right sequence of notes or chords, whatever. So you have to sit down and still work your way through it,
Yeah. So let me ask you, because like everybody finds the music that like inspires them to love music, but what was it when you were younger that made you decide that you were going to be a guitar player?
It's a funny story, man. I mean, of course, Guns N' Roses, I mentioned that. And to me, when I heard that album, I was like, I want to do that. I want to be like that. I want to do what these guys are doing. And I had no idea what kind of band they were. As far as the reputation, of course, I mean, they're big party guys and drunks and this and that, whatever. And when I bought the album, because remember, I found the tape, so I didn't have like the official album. It was a tape that was burned off of a CD or another tape or something. So it wasn't the official tape. And when I went to actually buy the album a couple of months later or weeks later, whatever, I saw the back cover and I was like, this looks intriguing. And the back cover of that, on the back cover of that album, it's a picture of the band, and they look they're stoned, like out of their mind, or drunk, or both, probably.
Absolutely.
I mean, and I was like, these are the guys that I've been listening to. Oh, cool. So then, of course, I started reading more up about them on the internet again because I was like, well, what are these guys about? What are they into? You know, stuff like that. What kind of guitars are they using or stuff like that? So I saw Slash, and man, Slash just looks cool, man. I'm like, the
Oh,
guy
he's the
is just
coolest. He's the coolest.
yeah, yeah. On the there was a video store close to our house that they had videos from like they had a music section.
Hmm.
So they had a whole bunch of videos from '80s bands like Guns N' Roses, Van Halen. So I rented all those out, man. It was all the videos or concerts of them. And one of the ones that I rented was the videos from Guns N' Roses. What is it called? Welcome to the Videos, I think. And so I would watch the videos, and I was like, man, that looks cool. And Slash, of course, is in his leather jacket, his top hat, and you can't see his face because his hair is all over his eyes and everything. And I was like, that looks awesome.
Yeah, he
Like, I want to
definitely.
be that guy.
Yeah, he had a vibe. He had a vibe back then, and I don't know. He was just so cool. Like he just gave off such a presence, and then, he kind of made like playing blues licks because that's basically what he's playing. He's playing blues licks, and
Uh-huh.
a lot of minor pentatonic and stuff. But he made all that super cool to a younger generation that hadn't really been overly exposed to it because
Mhm.
they, technically, I guess. I hate to say this because I love Guns N' Roses, but they're a hair band, and there's a lot of hair bands, but they were a different kind of hair band.
Yeah.
They put almost like a classic rock spin on it, and man, it was so cool, man. I can relate to all that because growing up, I love Appetite for Destruction was it was a good album. It was a really good album, and it got you to want to play guitar, right?
Yeah, definitely. Dude. I mean, that the reason why I'm here talking to you right now, 20 years later, is because of that record.
That's awesome.
So yeah, dude.
So your cousin, who you said he's a music teacher,
Mhm.
did he never really stepped in and tried to teach you anything?
Not after that. I mean, not that I was rude to him or anything, but he could see that I wasn't interested. Like he
Okay.
could tell that either I didn't get it or that I didn't want to get it. More than likely, the second thing, I didn't want to get it.
Yeah.
It was just me. Like it was just me being like, oh man, like you know what? I don't understand what this is. What are these dots and lines and half notes? What is that? Like I don't know what that is. Just I want to know what the chords are to this song so I can play it. So I mean, but even then, after he noticed that I was kind of picking things up on my own, he would encourage me. He would always be like, "Hey, man, like, I heard you playing the riff to that song. Where you learn that?" And I was like, "Oh, I found the tab on the internet." And he would be like, "Oh, you know what? But this over here is wrong. Here, let me show you the right way." So he would play it for me like the right way. I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." So that's when I started noticing that a lot of those tabs were wrong. And yeah, he was one of the ones that pushed me in the beginning. And then a friend of his started going by the house because I live with my relatives. I didn't live with my parents when I was younger. So a friend of my cousins started showing up to the house like from his high school days, and he's an older cousin too. So they started jamming, and they started jamming to Guns N' Roses, and then I made my second discovery in music, which was Van Halen,
Ooh.
because the guy he showed up to the house every now and then, at least once a week, and they would jam, like I said, and then he's like, "Hey, you remember any Van Halen?" To my cousin, right? Because my cousin's a drummer. And like I said, yeah, I think I remember a couple of songs. So they started jamming to, I think it was Ain't Talking About Love or one of the songs from the first record. And I was like, whoa, what is that? That's awesome. And again, that's one of the reasons, like, them watching them jamming on that stuff inspired me. Hey, I want to look this band up. Who are they? What are they about? So back when I was younger, man, I was kind of like a little sponge. I was just going around and whatever cool song that I heard, I was like, oh, who is that? Like, let me buy a record or whatever, because that was the way you did things back then.
Oh yeah. You picked some pretty good idols to have too. I'm not gonna let you.
Oh, yeah,
Eddie
man.
Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen. Right. Rest in peace. Good God.
Yeah.
Now, did you ever like join any bands as a kid?
As a kid, not really. My little cousins and I started like a little band, whatever, but it was just us messing around in the house. One of my cousins turned out to be a great drummer, who was the brother of my older music teacher cousin.
Okay.
And then another cousin that didn't live in the same household, but he lived close by, he ended up picking up a guitar also. And they were in a band together for a while after that, and when they got older, they were in high school, I think. And I think they played together for a while a few years ago, but I don't